Welcome, everybody, to the Global Manifesto for Flourishing at Work. This is a pioneering project aimed at reshaping HR to reimagine the work of the future. It is also a unique collaboration among HR professionals and practitioners, consultants, business leaders, and academics from truly across the globe. Together, we are trying to pool our expertise to create a comprehensive framework of both principles and practices to empower HR leaders to transform their own organizations and their own practices in such a way that enables their businesses to foster greater purpose, higher performance, and increased social value. So let me start with 3 questions. Firstly, do you still believe that performance management works? If your answer is yes, I truly encourage you to explore our compilation of existing research on the website, which we believe unequivocally demonstrates the inefficacy of many conventional practices. Secondly, do you still believe that performance management matters? We certainly do. And we've chosen to focus on performance management because it's not only the most crucial practice within HR, but it's also one that directly links HR with the business and line leadership throughout the entire organization. Any change in this area will have a significant ripple effect across teams. And finally, do you still believe that together we can make performance management better? And we sincerely hope you do. But I think we must also acknowledge that we failed to do so for many, many decades. So it's essential to understand the underlying root causes. And here, if you haven't already done so, you might find our presentation that is examining the problematic role of the business partner worth watching. So where do we go from here? When crafting a performance management system, and you can see the main components on the slide, we're faced with 3 critical questions. What constitutes performance? What are the drivers behind it? And how can it be scaled effectively across an organization? And as we all know, the answers aren't straightforward, and much depends on our prevailing management paradigms. And this is, as mentioned before, a crucial difference between this Flourishing Manifesto and the Agile Manifesto. We begin by zooming out to take a much more holistic view of the entire business model and our beliefs about business. And then we zoom in to very carefully align the business logic with the practices and methodologies that we deploy. And we believe that only through such an integrated approach can we make sure that we're not perpetuating some of the mostly unexamined beliefs and constraints that we face in traditional organizations. And this is perhaps why Antoinette and I can offer a few insights into what might seem a mostly internal HR discussion, because we're combining Antoinette's research in management and HR with my background in business transformation. And together, we've dedicated the past 3 years to figure out how to make businesses better. So let's have a quick look at what that means. Firstly, when we talk about conventional performance management, we often have in mind what we will call a red organization, traditional, conservative, and bureaucratic. And in this type of company, the primary objective is profit maximization or efficient delivery of service, achieved through economics of scale, clear functional divisions, and standardized workflows. Very often, a strict hierarchy governs the company, relying on formal procedures and rules for control and coordination. It operates a little bit like a well-oiled grandfather clock, where individuals are viewed very much as cogs in a big machine. So how does this paradigm link to performance management? Well, I believe the answer to those 3 questions is pretty clear. Firstly, what is performance? Well, it's about efficiency and quality and predictability and scale. Secondly, what fuels performance? Mostly it is based on formal qualifications and expertise, leveraged by extrinsic factors like hierarchical advancements and job security, and very often a significant degree of fear, especially of punishment. And how do we scale? Well, through rules and roles, or in other words, by operating with a very limited freedom in a very tight frame. And of course, this paradigm is one that most organizations have moved away from, recognizing its inability to keep pace with rapidly changing market conditions. Which brings us to this typically neoliberal agile management model, which emphasizes innovation and customer loyalty and market growth, and of course, share prices. While expertise remains crucial here, the ability to adapt it and learn new skills becomes paramount in a fast-moving environment. In ING, we were always saying it's about getting best at getting better. And consequentially, there's a significant focus on acquiring and selecting and optimizing human capital, as we all know. So how are the three performance management questions answered now? Well, performance is defined by speed and innovation, return on investment, and market metrics. What drives performance? Here we encounter what I will term the psychological transformation. Employees are viewed as rational and self-interested, optimizing their energy and all the energy they spend on every task by calculating the utility based on a highly transactional relationship with their company. Hence, organizations strive to optimize employee motivation in a very sophisticated way by using positive psychology, emphasizing autonomy, personal development, and of course, incentives, which include a wide range of perks from free canteens to Google playgrounds, office gyms, and meditation classes. How's performance scaled? We have all seen this: flatter hierarchies, cross-functional teams, more decentralized decision-making. Big, hairy, audacious goals, BHAGs, are cascaded across the organizations to make the elephants dance, which is exactly what we did in ING. And undoubtedly, there's progress. But I think it's also very critical to notice that there are challenges with this yellow paradigm. And you might recall a chart we presented in our Amsterdam presentation last year. Why do we argue that agile organizations perpetuate suffering? Well, because people are still instrumentalized in the name of profit. And it's quite intriguing to view this through a political lens. Despite all the rhetoric about liberation and freedom in such organizations, the power in Agile very rarely shifts. Shareholders and a select few executives at the top of the organization still hold most power and control. So freedom is really primarily negative. It's so-called freedom from interference. But it's also very limited because, if we're honest, people very often lie awake at night trying to figure out how to meet the budget or the next deliverable. And they mostly have the freedom to choose between obeying shareholders or bosses or exiting the business, possibly finding themselves out of work and socially isolated. And that what in politics is called domination. And you can see it on this chart here. Firstly, there's horizontal domination. All the enhancements in Agile ultimately serve to build human capital, as Antoinette always says, rather than nurturing human beings. While people in the red model were driven by negative power and fear, here they're exhausted very often by greed or competition and those positive power traps like a highly oppressive self-optimization mantra. And this power concentration, very often, as we've seen in scandals all over the world, leads to corruption and toxic cultures, and it is the greatest enemy of truth. Think about the Challenger disaster of Volkswagen. And secondly, if you look at the other axis, this is compounded by what is called vertical domination, where shareholder interests trump those of all other stakeholders in the firm. And of course, the neoliberal doctrine hinges on that belief that individual greed will ultimately lead to societal prosperity in a world of perfect competition and perfect information and perfect rationality and perfect everything. But of course, that's not how it works. There simply is no negative freedom without negative externalities. Shareholder supremacy pushes businesses to create lots of problems for people and planet that aren't factored into their profits. So in order to move us forward, we need what we will call a political transformation. We must bolster the freedom of both individuals and the other stakeholders, allowing them to thrive among equals with dignity and respect. And drawing here heavily from political theory, we find 3 tests that determine the basic legitimacy of an organization. First, the so-called eyeball test, ensuring there's no horizontal domination within the organization and people interact truly as moral equals. Secondly, the tough luck test, which challenges any potential vertical domination by discrimination or biased decision-making. And finally, what we have called the just profit test, which guards against external domination, stipulating that no company should profit at the expense of someone else. All stakeholders, including nature, must be equally respected. And let me once again emphasize what this means. According to prominent and well-respected political and legal theories, the notion that owners or investors possess a right to dominate over other citizens, which happen to be employees or members of their organization, as human beings, is totally unacceptable. They might have a right to own specific assets, depending on the contractual conditions of the enterprise. They never have the right to possess people. And you might say, these tests are not highly precise, and that is true, but we believe they offer important guidelines, firstly, to assess organizations that claim to be just and sustainable, and secondly, to serve as a starting point to challenge power imbalances and cultivate organizations that uphold what is called Republican freedom from domination. And such organizations, which we call Orange, start to prioritize social justice and dignity, respect, inclusivity, and most importantly, a basic set of liberties for everybody involved. They aim for moderation by giving all stakeholders an equal voice, and not just that ephemeral right of exit, which we've seen in the yellow organization. Decision-making processes become more democratic and transparent, which again, it doesn't mean that every employee has a right in every single decision. It means for those things that are potentially infringing those basic liberties, there's a right of contestation. So it could be a right to veto. What implications does all this have for our inquiry? Well, first and foremost, performance now involves much more holistic assessments, considering both shareholders and stakeholder metrics, including things like environmental sustainability and employee welfare. We are now only targeting fair profit, not fake profit that ignore externalities, as Colin Meyer says. And secondly, individuals here are recognized as human beings, not mere resources, and are afforded the freedom to be, with opportunities and genuine opportunities for personal development and growth. And I think most crucially, what we see is that the psychological contract with the organization changes as employees are involved in the governance and motivated by a much deeper sense of ownership and meaning, which fosters commitment and energy through both civic and relational dynamics. In terms of scalability, the organizational culture here combines autonomy with heedful collaboration, and authority is structurally distributed to prevent power concentration. So are we there yet? Not quite. Because going back to this chart, we can see that horizontally, individuals now have substantive freedom to be authentic and pursue their careers. We call that, as we said, freedom to be. Vertically, all the stakeholders are starting to be equally respected, and we are starting also to clean up some of the messes we've created. But this, in most cases, takes us only to reach the net positive point in the middle. Not to gain at the expense of others doesn't always imply that we are stopping to produce products that may be unhealthy or unnecessary, or that we're extending our efforts beyond profit making, or indeed that we are starting to help fostering and unlocking the potential in wider ecosystems with many other partners that can unite energies for greater impact. So the focus in Orange is on increasing the available energy through a changed psychological contract and through an appreciation of everybody's freedom and rights, but not necessarily at reaching beyond profit, which in other words means that we may be free, but we're not yet flourishing. But this is, of course, where things get very, very complicated, because delving into several millennia of moral philosophy reveals that flourishing is a highly complex endeavor. It goes beyond maximizing pleasure and minimizing pain, which we know and love from the yellow utilitarianism, or even ensuring social justice and equal well-being, as in that orange republicanism. It is neither just about outcomes nor just adherence to rules. It's actually about nurturing the inherent goodness within ourselves. And this becomes a path in pursuit of excellence, where we continually inquire how to bring to life the best of human possibility in any given situation and apply virtues and what is called practical wisdom to continually become through doing. And this gets us to our simplified formula. Flourishing is energy times excellence. It first requires us to harness the full energy and then to elevate it through excellence to reach towards our best selves, that famous telos. And it's quite intriguing, I think, to note here how we often become very trapped by that psychological transformation, which glorifies the fleeting and merely descriptive notion of flow, while neglecting the more objective and essential pull of potential. And the same is true for many concepts of purpose, which are often discussed without a clear definition and reduced often to subjective happiness or simply embellished organizational mission statements. But telos, to be clear, is not merely a better goal or a better feeling, but a practice. It is the capacity to bring forth the best of humanity in the present moment, actualizing human possibility through ourselves. It's complicated, but it's also a far deeper and more profound concept. And this is, I think, where we start to see the transition into that green good space on the slide. We are taking those individual energies unlocked within the orange organizations and we convert them towards fulfillment. But here comes the real challenge, because as humans, true flourishing only really occurs within a community of virtuous individuals who uplift each other. So organizations must try to create spaces where what we will now call freedom to become can emerge so that we truly thrive. And this is the second reason why flourishing is highly complex. Achieving it clearly goes beyond grandiose mission statements, corporate values plastered on head office walls, code of conducts, and even those very popular growth mindsets. And as we discussed in our business partner presentation, the simplistic iceberg model that you see on the slide of culture change overlooks the complexities and the interplay between people, culture, and structures that are hidden under the iceberg in social systems. And what we're saying now is that to truly foster an environment for flourishing, organizations must evolve each of these entities below the waterline, but also develop their integration and careful integration through governance. They must commit to a higher purpose through the active nurturing of both people and institutions. And by cultivating what we will call the moral character of an organization, excellence naturally emerges over time. And as a result of that excellence in interacting with the wider and open environment, social value increases, leading to flourishing as a byproduct. So again, the flourishing is what happens if excellence is being achieved. And this finally leads us to what we define as good organizations. These are quite beautiful businesses. Of course, I'm biased, but they are equally rare. They aim at social value, not profit. They are more than just platforms of skills. They act as almost commitment devices that enable us to collectively extend beyond ourselves and find fulfillment in our lives, which, if we're acting by ourselves, is very, very difficult to achieve. But also within these organizations, we start to feel at home because we are anchoring our lives within a significant relational and moral space, revealing our place over time in a meaningful social order. And thus, finally, work is liberated from its instrumentalization and transforms into an end in itself, fostering the best in everyone involved. And I think somehow there's maybe a very profound truth here, that we first have to gain our freedom to be able to give ourselves to something important, because otherwise that gift isn't valued. It's almost not worth giving. But paradoxically, it's only through giving ourselves away that we find the deepest meaning in life. So what constitutes performance in this purple paradigm? Well, it's the manifestation of that business excellence and social value, as well as a deep sense of personal fulfillment. What fuels performance? I think it's quite simple. It's genuine care for the people within the organization, the broader ecosystem and society, and the whole planet. People are truly driven by a deep commitment to make the world better through their lives, actualizing their inherent human potential. And how do we scale? By fostering organizational wisdom through a reflexive governance that enacts global purpose through local freedom. And this, we believe, demands a blend of organizational virtues, some red reliability, a bit of yellow courage, the orange justice, and the purple care, fostered through those four transformations: the psychological, the political, the moral, and the systemic. But above all, as you can see on the slide here, it requires a continual and purposeful increase in organizational consciousness and shared moral commitment to continually calibrate those virtues in order to actualize the best of humanity through work. This ultimately yields what has been called in philosophy absolute freedom, the fullest expression of human spirit. And this brings me to the end of this first part of the presentation. I hope it is becoming a bit clearer now why there's so much confusion in both language and theories, and so much complexity, and sometimes so much shallowness in our discussions about the future of work. To progress collectively, we need to first establish a common framework to reconnect our thinking about HR with our beliefs about business.